there are things that happen inside you that you didn't even know were physically possible. Did some cool shows. Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Jay-Z,
No way.
the Nitro Circus. I think that there is a future stage, and it might freak some people out. There was zero comfort in my life. I was half the time living out of my Toyota Corolla. I've always related to just releasing AI models to a company. It's like, you just distributed a bunch of machine guns out there, chainsaws. It's like incredibly powerful tools.
Are you okay to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can.
If
Get
it,
a little bit of cat out of the bag. It's in beta. It's not for public acceptance or adoptance yet, but it's in beta. The product you're referring to is called.
Welcome to the Future Minds podcast.
Hello, welcome in today's episode. Today I have a special guest. We have David Robinson, CEO and co-founder, the founder of my dev team. And he's an amazing guy. He's brought this company for the last, I think it's in 2012 it started up, and it's continuously growing, and he's a massive head in the space now. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, okay. Yeah, David Robinson, founder and CEO of my dev team. We do consulting and product development for digital products, software development, operations, all those kinds of good things. Kind of consider ourselves a more boutique version of what Accenture or Infosys kind of does for their clients in more of a mid-market fashion. So that's kind of that's where we do our business.
That's what you're heading into. And I guess before you transitioned into starting up your own organization, which you did, how did you kind of get into that space? What made you take the leap of faith, I guess? And what was your experience prior to it?
Oh my gosh, it depends on how far back you want to go.
As
Um,
far back as you'd like to take me. And
we'll try and do the quick version. How did I get there? So, actually, back in high school, I was an apprentice for light design, kind of theaters, concerts, things like that. And
okay.
I learned back then, they had software, they had sound modules and things like that, but actually running lighting, design, and programs for concerts is actually a really good practical sort of introduction to coding in a lot of ways. Just understanding how networks work and how DMX functions in different universes and how those shows get put together, while simultaneously, learning how to do things on your own because MySpace was big. The time, like learning how to build websites and do some basic HTML things, like all of that kind of happened, I think, for our generation at like the right time.
Mhm.
And I left, graduated high school, and I actually became, a lighting designer, did some tours, traveled around, did some cool shows. Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Jay-Z,
No way.
the Nitro Circus. Yeah, we did. I've done some cool
Laying that
shows.
down at the moment.
But I have a whole different set of stories for any one of those that happened. And from there, I became a dad pretty young. I had to get like a real job. I did what I knew how to do, which was gear in the music industry and things like that. And so I became a manager at a guitar center, and I was kind of doing what I could, making ends meet and taking care of myself and my son at the time. I needed to get like a real job, a better job, and that was a little bit tough, just coming from the circumstances that I was in. So working on formalizing my education and doing a couple other things at the same time. I decided that music was my life at the time, it was my passion.
Mhm.
I actually started to learn how to write business proposals at that time, while being a manager at Guitar Center. And the way that I learned business outside of the education I was doing around technology and things like that, was I would write a business proposal for, at the time, there was a startup that I was working on called partspunk.com.
Okay.
That was my thing. It was like it was the Expedia, the Travelocity for auto parts. Kind of like sourcing the best price for different things or whatever. Um, and I was working on that proposal and kind of meeting with different investors, and I would just ask them out to lunch, and I would pitch them, and they would completely destroy me,
Okay.
completely unprepared. And I would go back and I would stay up for multiple days in a row and rewrite everything and ask somebody else out to lunch. I would go sit with them, I'd pitch it again, and they would give me all the things I did wrong, and I would go back and fix it and go back again until I got to a point where they were like, actually, this this looks pretty good. let me go ahead and consider this. Ultimately, that thing never kind of went anywhere. But once I learned that skill, that principle, I decided that music was my life and I wanted to continue to do it. And I found a niche of professional audio gear, being in California,
Hmm.
where it was all located at, because that professional gear, they know where it is. And being in Central California, there wasn't a lot of option. And so I said to myself, well, like, let's create a recording studio. Let's operationalize the recording experience and let's do that. And so I did the same thing, put business proposal together and got an investment. It was like a $2 million like seed that we got, and we built a studio called Time Records at the time. And we built it and it was all good. And I got in business with some people that people warned me about, and me being way big for my britches, and my head was too big, and I was too excited about everything I was doing. I didn't pay attention to the all the T and C's of everything, and ultimately found my way out of the business that I got
Wow.
on its feet and started, and that was
Really?
a massive that was a massive bummer. And it
Yeah.
destroyed me. It was, yeah,
Wow.
it was the business that definitely got me started in terms of, like, knowing that I could really do this.
Was that the
And
transition into when you was like, okay, now I'm ready to be an entrepreneur, or I want to do this? Uh,
yeah, definitely. It was that time. And I from there I had an in, just from a technology perspective, for a healthcare network, or a doctor's network that kind of was throughout California, that specialized in women's health. And because I was kind of in a weird spot, I was like, just needed anything, and I grabbed onto it and I joined that group. And I started doing different technical projects for them. They specialized in the field of reproductive endocrinology. And I just started raising my hands for things that probably I should have never done. It's like you're just putting yourself out there and
yeah.
accepting those things, and you just take them on. And I just didn't sleep for weeks at a time, and I figured it out. I taught myself, and got through what I needed to get through, and developed some cool products, implemented a strategy of statistical process control inside of the field of reproductive endocrinology to improve live birth rates of
Wow.
IVF protocols and treatments. And we did international studies. I started to build and built up an electronic medical record system specifically for that industry. It became like the number one electronic medical record in that field, that space. I became accidentally the subject matter expert in women's health, in reproductive endocrinology, in that technology. And
Oh,
that kind of
this is
got me going.
at what age is this?
I was young. I was young. I mean, this is like my early 20s. Yeah, when this was all kind of going on.
Smashing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ultimately, the company kept growing, and we kept, employing people at that EMR company. And I kind of found my way in a position where it was like, I didn't feel like I was being compensated. We started hiring people for like twice my salary and things like that. I was like, what's going on? And I realized at that point, even I had the entrepreneurial bug. I was able to express and learn a whole bunch more from this experience, and I wanted to continue to grow in that. And I felt like I hit my ceiling. I was being kind of I found out that, it's like, you can do your best, but unless it's yours, unless you kind of have control over it, you do hit that ceiling. Wherever it is, you're gonna hit it, because you'll never be able to outpace the people providing the opportunity, right? And
Mhm.
that was frustrating to me. And I kind of had some conversations, said, listen, if we don't kind of solve this, I figured I can go do what I'm doing for them, for others: product design, architecture, development, release, management. Like, I can go do this for other people. I don't need to stay here. There are other people who need this service. I've got really good at this. And we were never able to come to terms. And so I kind of set out and scooted on my way. And I decided to start the company. And the company in its initial form was called Boost 365. It's the name that I
Is that
came up
like
with
a
at the
knockoff
time.
version of Microsoft, or?
Something like that, yeah. And so we started that way. Hired a couple employees, got some clients, things were going well.
Mhm.
Got uh, kind of was helping a couple different clients in the space. Ultimately ran into, yeah, I was consulting for consultants in New York,
Okay.
actually, kind of in a weird space. And they were working on a startup that I was aware of, because I was very familiar with the industry, and two companies had merged together to make one company. And it wasn't going so well. And so the founder of that company got ousted by the board, which was made up of the venture capital firms that were obviously supporting them. The former CEO and CFO of WebMD came in, took over, and I was their first hire. They headhunted me, and I was their first hire as their VP of engineering. And we did the whole zero to IPO exit and everything else. During that period of time, I didn't sunset the company, the consulting group, but I did kind of piecemeal it out a little bit. So I went into a little bit of a maintenance phase. We still had clients that we were over and looking after and things like that. But only until then I exited that experience out of New York to go through that whole, I'm standing on the floor of the NASDAQ, did the whole ring the bell, like good times, did that whole experience. Did I land back and say, like, okay, I've exited now, like now I can choose kind of what my path is going forward.
Mhm.
And through those experiences that I had, obviously wanted to continue. I knew I was going to continue doing consulting, but the question was is how I wanted to run it and what I had learned retrospectively to, take those experiences and how do I do it better? How do I do it better than everything else that I interacted with? I spent millions of dollars of other people's money interacting with different consulting firms to build different things, to do different third-party things, to push initiatives forward on behalf of other companies. I touched or interacted with all of the big ones, and there's nothing real that special about those teams. To be very honest, everybody's got their strengths, everybody's got their weaknesses, and there's a couple things about how they structured their deals, their time and materials, their deliverables, it's the way they communicated with their clients, it's the way they uh, carried out the projects that I felt I could do better. I felt, from a human to human perspective, people wanted something that they weren't delivering. And so I said, okay, if I was going to do this, how would I structure this? If I was going to do this myself, how would I want to be worked with? How would I want to be treated in that relationship? And that's when I set off to sort of formalize the second version of the consulting group, which became 365 development. We dropped the boost part of it. And naturally, we've rebranded over the years to my dev team, which it is that everybody kind of knows it as today. But
Mm.
it's a very organic upbringing in terms of these compounding experiences and unique opportunities, both national and international, and being exposed to these things and having the opportunity to interact with different levels of organizations that at a very young stage in my career was impactful to make critical decisions in how I structured the company now to deliver the service that I feel is competitive with the largest consulting firms at a more boutique level,
Yeah.
to facilitate that mid-market sector. And we love the partners we have now. Most of them love us. We hope they all love us. We have people that have been with us for a long time. I consider a lot of our clients, after having worked a couple of years with them, friends of mine. We do good business together, and we want nothing but success for our clients. And that is, in a nutshell, how my dev team came to be and where we come from as a historical past.
That is a really good and amazing summary, and kind of you gave the foundation of literally how you built into the role you are and the team that you have surrounding you today in an amazing way. And I think you've done some amazing stuff over the years, so you should be very proud of yourself for what you've built.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
would you say, with your experiences, you were saying, as it was kind of compiling and building, and obviously you learn of experience, right? So every time you have a new role or a new job, there's new challenges that come to it. And it sounded like you was really trying to get every minute detail within the organizations that you were helping. Was there one specific project you say that you worked on that was a definitive factor where you're like, okay, my expertise and what we're doing with this organization is really something you see progressing in the future?
Um, I, I think I think there was a point in the career where, have you ever seen the movie Yes Man?
I haven't, no.
Where with Jim, I think it's Jim Carrey. No, not Jim Carrey. Jim. Anyways, somebody will correct me. The idea is that he goes to a convention and he's like an investment bank. He's a banker, and so he like says no to everybody all the time. Like, no, you can't have a loan. No, you can't do this. And at one point, there was, he gets convinced to go to this convention because his life is just miserable. And he goes to this convention, the whole idea is that you just say yes to everything because that's how you explore life's opportunities.
Mhm.
And I think in so many ways there was a point where when I was being met with, you know, many different projects for sure, and one, a couple in particular that I could say that when I decided to say yes to it, I don't think that I was prepared to say yes to anything. But
You just kind of
I
feel.
decided to take, I don't want to say that you should just say yes. Like if you are 25 years old and you say yes with a zero education in, the petroleum business to go be a consultant on an oil refinery, like probably not the right time to just roll the dice, right? But like in so many other circumstances, I think that there's a lot to do with kind of taking the leap in when provided a door, put a foot through it and walk through that door and know and commit before you go in, knowing that you're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. And you will be amazed at how far and how fast you will progress in terms of meeting the requirements and getting to the place that you need to be successful. And from that, I think you'll learn 16,000 times more from the experience than you would any other way. And so I don't know that I would point it necessarily, but I certainly, some of those early experiences of those while sitting in a room and stuff flying around in terms of, well, who's going to pick this up and who's going to manage this, just simply raising your hand and just saying, yeah, I'll do that.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, what experience do you have? Well, like, not much, but I've done this and this, and we'll figure it out. I think that most people are capable of doing most things,
Yeah.
uh, as long as you make the decision to do it before you get into it. And I think that has everything to do with how, and once you do it once and you build that confidence, I think that confidence compounds and it makes it easier to say yes the next time and the next time and the next time. And from that way, I think those projects early on that I just said yes to were the ones that gave me the confidence to continue to move forward and built the foundation that I needed to just continue to move forward with it. Otherwise, I think I would have I get it. It's easy to stagnate. Like I get that.
Yeah.
It's too easy to, get caught and sit there and be like, well, I don't have the right experience yet. Maybe one day, and
I think a lot of people become too comfortable as well. They're comfortable in a
hmm,
position or a role that they're in, and I guess they don't see that there's more if you keep going for it and keep pushing. There's always.
yeah.
And
I will, I'm not saying I'm not advocating for anybody to do this, but I do think that the circumstances of my life at the time definitely lent itself to needing to step up in ways that maybe others necessarily don't feel like they need to, in terms that say, it's easy,
pressure of.
that comfortability factor. There was zero comfort in my life. It was half the time living out of my Toyota Corolla, that I sold my motorcycle to buy because I had a kid and needed a car seat
Mhm.
in the car, like that. I mean, that was my life. And so I didn't have options. It was, I'm gonna have to be successful at this, or the future outlook on my life is not looking great. I'm going to end up like a statistic, and I don't want to be that. And so I'll do anything it takes to not be that. But if I didn't become I do equate a lot of the early things that happen to when you become a father, and if you step up to that challenge of becoming a father at a young age, like I did, not advocating for anything, but if when you do become a father, and if you step up to that task, your life changes instantaneously. And there are things that happen inside you that you didn't even know were physically possible to do. I look back at that, I have no idea some of those things how I did them. No idea. But I do know that that part of me, that becoming a father part of me,
Mhm.
drove me to be able to accomplish some of those things. I had an outside influence. My why was bigger than the next guy's why.
Yeah.
My why was 10,000 times bigger. It didn't matter. The only thing mattered that was success. And it wasn't about success for me. I knew I was able to correctly place that success metric. That success metric for me was whatever I'm touching must be successful. Not David needs to be successful. I needed to make sure that thing was successful. In turn, that will reflect kindly upon my work.
Mhm.
But my success metric was making sure whatever I was touching was successful. And that's what I focused on. And I will say that, God willing, that method seems to work out okay. If you're focused on whatever it is you're doing, just be successful at that. It came back and it paid dividends, and it continues to do so today. And I feel very strongly that, you know, my commitment to everything that I touch is still the same. And I try and instill that into everybody that I work with now, you know, in terms of who we employ, et cetera.
That was gonna, to be fair, that was gonna lead to my next question. I was gonna say, you're clearly amazing at what you do. So within your organization, how do you, I guess if you say you make sure everyone has that quality about them, what is a good candidate and how do you get them in to work with you and alongside you and know that they're kind of on the same path and mission you're on in making sure that everything
Um,
is brilliant that you touch and to the highest of standards?
yeah, and we try, right? And there's I feel very strongly that if I sit at the table to have a meal with one of our partners or one of our clients, anybody that we do work for, I want to be able to sit down at that table, even if things aren't going great. And if things aren't going great, it's not because we haven't done what we said we were going to do. It's because of uh, technically there are challenges in the marketplace. There are challenges. There have been updates that have been unforeseen. There are changes in scope that we did not foresee that we're adjusting to. If there's something that's going on that is less than positive in the relationship as we work to be successful on behalf of anybody who we come in contact with, it's not because we're sitting around putting our thumbs, blaming things, or not putting in the requisite efforts to correct or attack certain things. In order to establish that, I think it does have a lot to do with having the experience myself and trying to transcend a lot of that downwards into other individuals so that they understand it. And it takes time to get to the right people. I think we have an incredible team now. I can't say that that's always been the case necessarily, but we have a good team now that's taken years and years and years to cultivate and to create a culture of, you know, that winning mentality. I think it's two things. I think during the interview process and as we're working with people, as we get to know people, it's kind of the simple, silly stuff, right? It's like I call it just being a human. I mean, I know there's like no good way to say that. Like when we're talking, when we're interacting with people, especially at levels of like a position we have in the company called the solution architect, anybody there and above, that human element comes into question. We do tangibly talk about it.
Mm.
It's kind of that elevator test. Like you get stuck in an elevator for 3 hours and you had to be stuck with somebody. Could you be stuck with this person in that elevator and not want to kill them? You know, like if that, can they carry a conversation? Do they have the right empathetic, you know, sort of responses in order to relate their own personal experiences with the situation, be able to have enough command of the conversation to inform the other side, etc. Um, from that perspective. And then the second one is just the willingness to, again, as silly as it sounds, there's a there's something that we talk about with every person that joins the company is their willingness to do the work.
Mhm.
And there's kind of a silly test that we do actually to judge this in a lot of the positions in the company, which is during kind of an interview process, you're kind of making it down the road a little bit. It doesn't apply to all positions, but I'll give you kind of an example. And the example is, especially for some of the people on the technical side, like the developers
Mhm.
in that part of the company, not necessarily the consultancy side, but the development side, is we give tests and for onboarding to check qualifications and things like that. And there are certain problems that we give that allow us to see within the workspace of that individual. It's a timed thing, so there is some pressure to it.
Mhm.
And the whole purpose is getting them into that problem, having them see it, and watching different scenarios where they decide to try and like over optimize, right? They're trying to get something done, they over optimize it, and it's meant to be not able to be optimized. Now, you could like come up with workarounds and things that you could do to like kind of like solve this problem so it like does the thing.
Yeah.
But then there's also kind of like the dumb way to do it, where you're just like, like, listen, the goal and the parameters is to get the job done. That was the goal. That's the parameter, that's the framework. Sometimes you just have to do it the dumb way, which is you just got to go and do the thing like manually so that you can move on to the next thing. And there's something about that test that reveals a lot about how the individual thinks through problems.
Mhm.
There certainly are instances where defaulting to our engineering side of the brain, where we are trying to overcome complex situations or tasks, but in respect to business. Business does not always respect the time necessary to do things all the way that we want to. Not to say you're not going to return to it and maybe correct it later, but when you're up against the timeline, sometimes you got to do it the dumb way. People don't want to do it the dumb way because the dumb way it takes a lot of work.
Mhm.
And you know that it's not replicable. You got to do it that way every single time. So it goes against your internal instinct because everything you've learned so far is like, well, I've got to write a query, and then we're going to kind of format it like this, and we're going to put it in a database, and we're going to kind of clean it up, and we're going to structure it. We're going to just do the just do the thing. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? Like,
Exactly what you mean. Yeah.
and it's a weird test that we do that we've discovered that kind of reveals people for a little bit of like how they think about the problems, and it's
Mhm.
it's being willing to do that work that allows us to continue to deliver at that level. And I would say that we constantly talk about, and this is a development company, like we're a consultancy firm that talks about. And I know for if you say the word consultancy, like I think that word comes up with the word winning, right? But when you talk about it from like an engineering standpoint, it's like, hey, like we're IT, we're gonna get this done or whatever. I'd put us up against any other group out there who talks about winning and success culture as much as we do. It's an expectation for us on behalf of our clients. We expect to win. We expect to succeed. We expect to do those things. And I think even just talking about it is different. And so sometimes to win, you just have to do that work. Like that is what it takes.
Although it sounds very cheesy, the power of manifestation, I think, is really real and true. When you
Yes.
really train your brain to believe, I'm going to do this, it's going to succeed, it's going to work, there is no other your brain can't fathom another option. So it will keep working at it until it finally gets there. And I agree.
Yeah.
It's a powerful thing to have. I think, yeah, you're right in saying building that kind of culture in your workspace is clearly what contributes to your success within your organization.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I will see, people that come here that do that this does fit for them and they join and everything else. Thankfully, I would say that we have, as the company has grown, our attrition rate is actually quite low. But when people do end up moving on, we want everybody to be successful, including the people that come and work for us for a time and decide to move on. When they do move on, and they're excited to take this experience and go somewhere else, and they go work at AWS or Google or Apple or anywhere else after this. I couldn't be more excited for them, right? Like I want them to be successful in their own lives, and if they want to go do that, that's fantastic. We've had people that move on from us and do eventually actually come back as well because they actually enjoyed the culture so much and like the quality of life and how we handle business that's different than most other places, that they do come back and they bring that culture right back with them. And we want to leave everything better than we found it, including the people that work here. And for a lot of people, I understand that they're like, okay, great, that's for your business. I promise you, you don't want a company working on critical infrastructure of your company who doesn't feel that way.
Mm.
If a company that you're working with feels that their employees and the people doing the work and everything else are in any way, sense, or form, or they treat them as anything less, or as disposable, as a commodity, or whatever it is, you don't want that person, you don't want that company working on your infrastructure because they're going to apply the same care to your infrastructure that they're receiving from their organization.
Yeah.
Like, I promise you, it's bad news bears at some point in the future for that relationship, and it's that decision, especially in terms of like when it comes to who worked for us and everything else. Um, it's who decides to work with us, who you work with, especially in comparison to like in the field and everything else, is such a critical thing. And I'm not even saying that we're always the right fit.
Mhm.
Sometimes there are other groups for other reasons, for other, I can't, all the different ways that makes sense. We're not for everybody, but we are for the people who are looking for the experience that we provide in terms of our partnership with them. And we try and again leave everybody as better than you found them.
Yeah.
Clients, employees, everything, everybody, always.
That's wicked. You sound very much like the first company that I got into tech with. And in all honesty, if they wasn't acquired, I probably to this day would probably still be with them because of how the culture was and the way that everyone had that similar mindset. And it was always just, we're all here for each other. We can all grow, we can all learn. And we always just want to deliver the best at the highest. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get why people would come back. It makes sense. Um, I guess with your business as well, I know you have a new tool that you guys are introducing as well. Are you okay to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can.
If
A
it,
little bit of cat out of the bag. It's in beta. It's not for public acceptance or adoptance yet, but it's in beta. The product you're referring to is called Introspect. Um, Kind of an interesting story with that one. I'll give credit where credit is due. There's a couple of individuals in the company, one in particular who is a particularly innovative individual. His name is Edwin, and he's probably one of he is our top solution architect or one of them, and because we have a lot of them, and he's fantastic. And there's been a period of growth across the last year and a half that has been it continues to compound, which has been exciting, and things like that. And as new resources come on board, from my position, my time continues to get more and more constrained,
Mhm.
just naturally because of things. But I try and be involved in as much as I can. I try and be available to whoever needs me. I try and
Yeah.
impart as much of my ability to participate as I can to anybody who needs it. And there are plenty of instances where it's a complex situation. How would you handle this? And yeah, you give me most any situation about 30 seconds, I'll probably have like 3 paragraphs long of how I might handle any given situation just because of time in the game. Let's just call it that. And as the company grew and new employees were entering and they would love to have asked me more questions and things like that, my time was tight and I wasn't being able to respond to them. Load was being placed everywhere else. So from an interesting standpoint, the company, a lot of companies have this problem is like, how do you duplicate key people in the company?
Mhm.
How do you duplicate them? How do you take those people and kind of transcend them? And you can't really, and I've found that in order to duplicate myself, it takes maybe 3 or 4 people total to kind of like do maybe a similar job around something that I would do just myself.
But
And that's
you've got the knowledge base of that specific task or that project. So yeah, you've been there before. That's
right. And many of these individuals in the company have seen, emails, have seen communication, have been on the meetings, have seen me in action, have seen me operate, and they're trying to kind of synthesize that and try and do it in their own way. I'm not asking people to be me. That's
Mhm.
not what we're trying to do. But there is a lot of lessons that we've learned about how to appropriately handle situations where, anyways, they were trying to synthesize that. So what they ended up doing on their own is there was a project that happened, and after it was all said and done, we were doing a retrospective, and after it was all done, I was like, it would be interesting is to just kind of like put some journal entries around this so that we can we'll reflect back on some of this experience that was a challenging experience. And he was like, yeah, for sure, I'll do that. That'd be great or whatever. And then off the top of my head, I was like, what'd be interesting is if you actually took some of those journal entries that we have done and some of the communications we had during this difficult period of time, and actually feeding it to a research model, an AI research model, and having it kind of pull context and create a case study around this for us. And just something interesting. Like we don't know what's going to happen or how it's going to come out. A multi-page document about other related experiences and how we can do it better. Like it would just be really interesting. And his response was, "Oh, I was already planning on doing that." And knowing him as an individual, I 100% believe that's what he was going to do on his Saturday. Like he was going to take this information from work all week and like do some of this like research model stuff. And I was like, of course you would, of course you would do that. And he's like, actually, can I actually tell you something? And I was like, yeah, sure. What's on your mind, man? He's like, I have to admit something to you. I'm like, yeah. He's like, so remember, all these problems, just the problems we were explaining, the needing to duplicate, the scale of the company, time constraints. He's like, with all this going on, I just got this idea where I started training a model around you and like how you do the business. And I was like, okay. And he's like, remember that email that I sent a couple of months back and you were like really impressed with it or whatever? And I was like, wait a minute. And so I went back in my memory there for sure. I still remember today. There was an email update about around this situation from months previous that he had sent that I like on pure happenstance happened to catch it. It was like as it was in transit, and I was like just catching because it was a hot topic at the time. And I read it, and I remember reading it, going like, "God damn, that's a fantastic report! Like that's amazing! Like, dude, you did that! Like this is your report. This is incredible! Like zero edits, perfect to the T. Like great job, attaboy. Take a 3-day weekend. Kind of a thing. Like that was amazing. Like that's what it needed." And I was like, yeah. He's like, Well, that was the first time that I felt like the model was trained enough. And that email was actually supposed to be like, I used that model to write that email to send to that thing, which is why I think you liked it so much. So initially, the wave of like egotistical embarrassment like washes over, like, oh no, like that's so bad. Because like I had no idea at the time and I was being made aware of it in the future. Like, oh,
He was
just so
practically writing
embarrassing.
an email.
Yeah, it was so embarrassing. I was like, I liked it because it sounded like me. Like, oh God, like not a good look. And so we laughed about it for a minute. But I mean, from his standpoint of the company, he's doing what he should do, which is when problems arise, he's innovating around them. And then he started to expand that outside of himself, offer it to other people in the company to test it and do different things. And I was like, number one, I'm super embarrassed. Number two, that's perfect. Like amazing. We broke off from that conversation and started to dawn on me about this, about how to implement it, which I was in no different of a situation than everybody else has been in the last year and a half, 2 years in terms of okay, AI is great. How do you implement this?
Hmm.
You know, you can't like throw an AI out there
Everyone
is
just
is
jumps on the
is
bandwagon because it's out there, but they don't know what they're doing
right.
at the moment. Yeah.
Right. And I've always related, it's like corporations are adopting AI and they're kind of picking their pony, whether it's Gemini, whether it's Claude, whether it's ChatGPT, whatever it is, and they're buying the business subscription and throwing it out to their employees. Because you got these executives going to conferences. At the conferences, they're shoving AI down their throats. And if they don't use it, they're going to be left behind. They come back, they get in boardroom, they get all their VPs together, they go, okay, great, we're going to do AI, and everybody, yeah, we're going to do AI, and then they say, okay, great, who's got ideas, right? So how are we going to do this? And somebody's like, I use ChatGPT for email. Awesome. Thank you, Jared, in the front row. Like, let's get ChatGPT for everybody. And then they send ChatGPT out to the company, and it's like, who else has an idea? And everyone's like, oh, Canva has an AI integration, so we're good there. It's like these little piecemeal solutions start to come off of it. And I've always related to just releasing AI models to a company. It's like, you just distributed a bunch of machine guns out there, chainsaws. It's like incredibly powerful tools that if you're an incredible employee and you're very top tier, your ability to
Right.
interact with more things goes through the ceiling. So your impact goes up. But if you are the rest of the 60 to 75% of the company who is just like mid or below in terms of their actual performance, you just gave a weapon to a bunch of people to do that exact same level of work at a larger scale. Like that's scary to me. That's terrifying. With no construct and no kind of no way to like kind of put any
There's no barrier.
controls around it. And now, yeah, and controls are coming and they're happening. But so the question is like, okay, great, there's that instance of just like integrating AI, and of course we were no different than everybody else trying to figure out, yes, we were building AI or agentic tools and doing different things for clients and applications, things like that, but we still haven't really, other than sort of implementing it into our workflows from a coding perspective and things like that. We weren't sure how to really operationalize it as an organization. So what I'm saying is we weren't any different than anybody else we were talking to in terms of, we knew this is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't wasting our time trying to like bang our heads against the wall, like, how are we going to use this technology? It kind of approached us. It found us in a way that we said, okay, this is how we're going to use it. So today we have groups that are just like us, that were in that state, that are undergoing AI readiness. Because what you can't do is you can't just take any model, put it in a company and say, work. Right? Work against what? AI is only as good as the context that you give it. And so if all your stuff is in all these legacy systems and all these databases everywhere, now you got to do these integrations. You're hoping they don't break. Now you've got vendor lock-in with the different models who are hooking into your different things. You got privacy concerns, you got all kinds of stuff going on. And your vendor locked in, so you're kind of like now being controlled, just like you would do with any other closed source kind of network. And so it's like, okay, that's not a good path for us. But so how do we overcome this? So with that idea that came from that solution architect, who's an incredible person, and had this initial seed idea of like how he began to use it for himself and personally, was, okay, great, how do we translate that over to allow for global knowledge in the company and the organization? And we started off with this idea that, okay, we work on a project or an account basis. Our ultimate goal is to always provide more value to them. How do we provide more value to them? Is we allow models to train off of everything that we know of every single project that we touch. So we want to assimilate a data warehouse that has everything that has to do with our individual accounts. So let's go ahead and say account, Jake's Pizza is the pizza conglomerate that's really taken over, a piece of the pizza empire. And we're building a technology for you. What do we want this AI to know about Jake's Pizza? We want it to know who you are. We want to know who the executives are. We want to know what the company URL is. We want to know all of the background information. We want to know what your mission statement is. We want to know who your competitors are. I want to know how many employees you have. I want to know what we're building for you. I want to know what you're doing as a company.
Mhm.
I want to feed a model all the context about your company I could possibly feed it. So it knows at the end of it all, it's going to know more about Jake's Pizza ultimately than you and I ever will. Not saying that you don't have this intrinsic sort of founder quality of like how it came to be and everything else, but objectively in the marketplace, once it grabs all that information, then goes and looks at the rest of the world in
Mhm.
terms of data sets about other competing pizza conglomerates and how you're taking over the Midwest and how they're competing and how, who invested in what and who acquired who and how that's going to play into the future of the pizza kingdom in the near future, and how you're going to compete against that by offering these services or these toppings or deliver pizza via a drone as opposed to via van, when you go drop pizza off at people's houses. All of these things come into play. And so we want to be able to gather all that information about your company. And then as we start to work on that, we start to interact with you. We're building technology. It knows every line of code in the code base. We start getting access to conversations. It starts learning who Jake is on every single call. It knows who you are as a client, as a person, as an organization. The biggest thing that it starts to learn is how Jake's Pizza makes decisions. Because decisions are the things that get lost in the context that require the humans to be there.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say, hey, we decided to do this in the company. The question is how you got to that. How did you get to that decision? How did that decision manifest itself?
A way of kind
Where
of
is all
like
of the
opening the value essentially and saying, this
yeah,
is the reason why we normally do this or invest in that, or there's clearly some signifiers that makes that happen.
yeah, there are these soft data points that are subjective in nature in terms of how decisions and influence of the decisions get made and how things start to progress forward. And then once we have that data, meaning every meeting that happens, every email that's sent, every Slack message that's sent, every line of code that gets deployed, every bug that gets caught, every action your competitor takes, everything that happens in and around your organization, whether we're directly involved with it as your consulting firm or not, our system is tracking and training against it to assist us in informing you and ultimately our goal together to provide you with options to always be more competitive than the biggest competitor or your next competitor. And so not only are we building solutions for you, this is constantly running research and competitive analysis and suggesting things and looking for early warning signs and flagging things and looking for those different elements that from our standpoint, this tool Introspect was initially designed for us to do and deliver our services better to our clients than any other consulting firm in the world. So in a short few months, once we get past beta, I fully anticipate that we will be outpacing every consultancy in the world with this proprietary piece of technology in AI and how we handle our projects and our clients. I'm willing to bet that. Now, what does that mean for Jake's Pizza? Let's go ahead and say, outside of the structure of our business, let's say Jake's Pizza adopts this piece of technology. What does that allow Jake's Pizza to do? Well, what it allows Jake's Pizza to do, let's go ahead and say you got some account managers about Jake's Pizza in the Midwest. You're going to have an account manager who's overseeing your critical partnerships over there. Well, when they interact with the system, they can only interact with that system and that knowledge base and those tools at the level that is requisite for their job, right? They're only going to be able to talk about and interact with an agent or do different things within the system that is limited to their job. But Jake at Jake's Pizza, at an executive level, has a whole different set of priorities. You see everything, and you could approach that system and you could say, hey, who, for example, you could say, who's our most, give you a list of our top 10 employees. And it will say, oh, based on everything that I have consumed about your company, the interactions, the response times, the who's writing the best code, who's managing and closing the most sales, who's doing everything else. It'll give you a top 10 results of employees. And maybe the initial result is giving you top 10 employees. And you go, no, I meant top 10 employees in terms of output and positive outcome of their agenda items. And it says, oh, sure, reshuffles the list, gives you a couple new names, moves some people around. Now you know the exact people without fail objectively who actually meets the criteria of who's the best employee in your company. Now, the typical way that organizations grow, and that's we're talking about like a C-suite level advantage here.
Yep.
Typically, you've been in organizations where you enter the organizations, you start as a lower level, become manager, become a director, then to a VP, then to a president. Like in order to get on the path to receiving a raise and getting new sets of privileges and climbing the corporate ladder, et cetera, there's a game to be played. And everybody who's here knows exactly what we're talking about. You have a manager, you got to kind of befriend them, find yourself in critical projects, get your name on the board. Then maybe out of a series of political events that happen, you'll get that next spot, right? Everybody's very familiar with this. We all are very familiar with the fact that that person that gets picked does not always represent the best person for the job.
Yep.
But that is inherently a misstep in the guidance of pushing a company forward. You want A players and the right person in those positions to trickle down what they do so well into the rest of the organization. And if you misstep those promotional periods, that's a problem for your organization, not tomorrow, but in a year from now. And so if you as an executive have an objective way to look through all of the data transparently about every communication that's ever happened, every meeting that's ever happened, every outcome of the decision that you played a part in, every client that's under your watch, right? If you can't look at that data and ask those questions and look at that, you're stuck to this old way of doing things of like, man, I hope I have the right people in the right place. Right? In this way, you're going to be able to look through the data completely transparent without bias and actually select people that should be in those positions. Now, let's say on another off case, Jake's Pizza is doing a big deal on West Coast of California where you're going to take over the entire state and you're in the middle of something. And inevitably, as an executive, you get a text message from the other CEO who's doing the deal with you and says, need to talk, call you in 5. What does Jake do? Holy shit. What's going on? I need to know everything about what's going on with this because before I get on this phone call, I'm not aware of anything bad going on. So what do? You panic dial your VP, you panic dial the account manager, you panic dial whoever it is that you think has any information that might be relevant to you to be prepared for whatever's about to happen on this call so you don't screw it up. And they don't answer. And what do? As an executive, most days, I would say that executives have a very capable quality about them of getting on calls, no matter regarding the information and surviving.
Yeah.
Right. But surviving is not progressing. It's just holding the line. If you had something like introspect before that call happened and without panic dialing everybody, you could go into it and you could basically just ask, hey, just got this text message from this client. They're asking to get on a call in 5 minutes. What's the last 2 weeks of updates? Where do we stand with things? And is there anything that I should know as possibly a warning before I get on this call? Boom, it puts out a summary for you across the organization's communications and everything that's happened for it. And you can get on that call and be informed and know what to say and be prepared for that without having to interact with anybody else in the company and be ready to go.
It sounds like one of the most genius C-suite tools that can be invented in this current time.
I kind of refer to it a little bit like it's transparent business intelligence. Right. And it's extraordinarily practical. And the more that we've talked about it, the more that we've released it, the more that we've had communications with others who are starting to test some of these things out. They're using it in different ways than just like anything that's quality, right? It's like they start doing different things than you ever thought, where, you've got all this information, the system is an organization and people are managing their accounts, doing their things. And then I had a CFO ask me, they're like, hey, if I had this and at the end of the calendar year, I asked it if we actually met any new tax codes because of the work that we've been doing for clients or on behalf of the company and everything else, would it help me be able to back in the work that we've done and calculate the amount of hours spent in those things and back those into new tax codes for write-off purposes for the end of year close of business? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I get, I haven't used it that way, but the answer is yeah. You could totally do that. It knows everything. It knows everything everybody's working on, and it knows when they're responding to things. It could definitely estimate those types of things, whatever. And they were like, okay, fantastic. And they we tested it out one time, and the savings in terms of the tax filings that they were able to actually qualify for with this evidence being brought through the system, what we are sort of working on in terms of like a model of how we're going to distribute this thing, the tax break that they were getting was like 3x the times the expense of the actual platform because of the scale of the business that they're doing on an annual basis. And so it effectively pays for itself plus, more.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's interesting. Didn't see that one coming, like, and that's exciting. And that's when things, I think, from my standpoint, get fun. It's these little instances that happen in terms of what you do as an organization. I will say that this project that we call introspect now, um, this is a perfect example of something I feel very passionate about for my dev team as a company. Even we call it drinking the Kool-Aid, which everybody's mostly familiar with that saying, right? It means that you're doing what you're telling everybody else to do. You're doing the things, you're walking the walk. Like, would you ever go have a custom home builder build you a custom home that hasn't built themselves a home?
No, of course not.
Right. It seems a bit ridiculous, right? There isn't a single thing that we ask or that we interact with our clients on a day-to-day basis, depending on where they're at in their cycle. Startup, early investment. I've done it. I've done it all. I've personally invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into different projects, different applications, different things. When we have a group that's working with us that is in the startup phases, in the trenches, and the CEOs, it's more sort of therapeutic than it is practical. And we're sitting there, we're talking about it, and they're telling me, it hurts. I'm 6 figures deep and we haven't launched into, whatever it is. And we haven't reached these goals yet, but I know that it's a couple months off because this is what the plan was all the time. But it feels different now that I'm in this experience than I thought it was going to. If you haven't worked with somebody like that has gone through it, it's tough. Otherwise, I'm sitting here and we're just blowing smoke, right? I can see, oh, hang on, it's going to get better. Trust me, I know what it feels like to go home and be $250,000 in the red, and have not launched or whatever it is, right? Or whatever. And it's something that I feel very, very passionate about, that we don't ask anybody to do anything that we haven't done ourselves, that I haven't done myself, that this company hasn't invested in itself. And Introspect is like a perfect example of that. There's a problem that needs to be solved. It's in the trenches of being solved organically through the inspiration of certain employees or solving certain problems along the way. I'd like to think it's because of our culture. I think it's also because some of the employees here are just unique, very special people that I'm glad are on our team. But like, let's just call it like a big conglomerate of like, because of the environment, it allowed this thing to come forth. This idea, this seed, that seed then grew into a bigger idea that was going to solve problems for us to do our job better, to provide more value to our clients, that now is extended beyond what we were going to do for ourselves, and now is hopefully has the potential of helping and radicalizing change in the way that C-suite executives and organizations actually distribute AI to their corporations, to actually provide measures and controls and have meaning behind how they're using it, as opposed to just this machine gun chainsaw approach of just here you go. How do you track those things? How do you internalize those things? I think in the future, I think we all understand maybe not the control of AI necessarily from a Terminator perspective, but right now, Introspect, I think, is aiming towards becoming the company, right? It will know more objectively than the collective minds of any company if it's embedded long enough. It will learn everybody's position. It will know how everybody communicates. It will know how you all make decisions. It's in every meeting. It's always there, right? It's collecting this knowledge for you. And so right now, when you get hired to a company, and this is how it's been since the beginning of time, when you get hired to a company, they're very judicious about when they hire you, because you are going to be an advocate. You are working as the company. You are a piece of the company. When you go out there and you have an account management meeting with a client or whatever, you are the company.
Yep.
I think that there is a future stage, and it might freak some people out, that you are going to be working on behalf of the company in the very near future. You're going to be told, like, from some of these services, from some of these instances, and you're going to mix in your human intuition, right? There's going to be kind of a emerging effect going on here. But people are going to, there's a vast majority of the people that work inside of companies on behalf of or as the company, and will start to slowly regress into working on behalf of the company, doing what the company asks them to do. And when I say the company, it is this
Introspect.
data
Yeah.
cloud, it is this introspect layer. And whether it's introspect or something else, if it's not introspect, I promise something else is coming, right? At this point, I think we're
Yeah, it'll
probably
be
right
introspect.
there.
Seems like
Yeah,
the right
it'll be. Yeah, I hope so. You know, if it's not us, it's somebody else. But we all, those positions, largely 85% of positions, will start to work on behalf of the company, what we're being told to do.
Yeah.
You know, less of we're taking information and we're deciding what we're going to do.
This
It's
is
going
now
to tell us kind of what your steps are.
essentially the next shift of AI is it being, yeah, exactly what you're saying, telling us what to do rather
Yeah,
than us tell it what to do and how to.
yeah, it knows a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, if you can pick up your entire business just under one hat, then that's huge.
Yeah,
That
it's
is.
interesting, all of it. Sorry, that was a very long explanation of how it all
No,
came
thank
together.
you
But
so much for that explanation. And I mean, you went into as much detail as you can, and it does sound like something that the future needs, and it's going to be exciting when it's in full release and going around the world globally. I truly believe
yeah,
it will. I
I
do.
appreciate that. No, thank you. This is kind of the first time we're talking about it publicly a little bit.
That's huge. It's great to be the ones to share it. Well, thank you. I mean, it's been great hearing about your story, how well your organization is doing, and it's brilliant that we've had a sneak peek into something that's coming in the future. It's going to be huge, and I do think it is going to be something that's going to change the game. So I'm excited to see your success and within your organization and for it to continue growing. So
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
wicked. Thanks so much, David.